the return from silence. That was what the galaxy called it when the Eternal Resolve appeared again after centuries. But for Lieutenant Kieran Hawley, it meant something far more personal. He stood on the Supercarrier's observation deck, staring at the endless stretch of stars. Somewhere out there, light years away, was Commander Ilara Vey. She had been his closest friend, his anchor in the chaos of training, the one who believed in him when others only saw a restless rookie. And then she had been assigned to a deep space research mission and disappeared into the Black Rift. That was 10 years ago. Most people believed she was gone forever. Ships that entered the rift never came back. The silence was final. But Kieran had never stopped hoping. The Eternal Resolve was humanity's pride, the largest supercarrier ever built, and now it had been tasked with something no other. Fleet dared, entering the Black Rift. When Kieran heard the mission briefing, his heart raced. It wasn't only about charting unknown space. It was about the possibility, slim as it was, that someone he cared about might be out there, waiting. Still, as the days passed before launch, the distance between his memories and the reality of her absence felt heavier. He wanted to talk to her, to send a message into the void, but he didn't even know if she'd hear it or if she was alive. His mind kept returning to their last conversation. They had stood in the hangar after her reassignment, and she had smiled at him. "Don't let the stars make you forget the people in them, Kieran." Those were the last words she'd ever said to him. The night before departure, Kieran found himself in the ship's comm room. The long-range transmitters were silent, only carrying the faint hum of background static from deep space. He sat down, staring at the blinking cursor on the input console. He didn't know what to say, or even if this was worth doing. Finally, he pressed record. "Who?" "Ilara, it's me, Kieran." He paused, feeling the weight of 10 years pressing down on him. "We're going into the rift. People think it's impossible, but you know us. We've always liked doing impossible things. If you're out there, if you can hear this, I'll find you." He stopped the recording and hesitated. It felt foolish. The message might never reach anyone, but he sent it anyway. When the Eternal Resolve left dock, the galaxy watched in silence. Every alien civilization had warned humanity to stay away from the rift, but the crew pressed forward, shields humming, engines burning brighter than the stars. Kieran threw himself into his duties, running diagnostics, double-checking the fighter wings, maintaining the ship's navigation AI. Work was the only thing that kept him from dwelling on the ache of distance. The closer they got to the rift, the more the space around them changed. Stars seemed to fade. Light bent in strange ways, like the universe was holding its breath. Static whispers began to creep into their comms, fragments of old distress calls from ships long vanished. Then, on the 7th day, it happened. Kieran was in the comm room again, running signal sweeps. At first, he thought it was more static, but then the pattern shifted, faint, irregular beeps. His breath caught. It was a code, old human fleet code. And it wasn't random. It was sending a name. Over and over, HLE. "Kieran Hawley," he whispered. His own name. He slammed the alert button, pulling the signal up on the main display. It was weak, buried in the noise, but unmistakable. Someone was calling for him from inside the rift. The crew's response was immediate. Admiral Voss himself appeared on the comms. "Lieutenant Howe, can you trace the signal?" Kieran's hands flew across the console. "It's deep, far past the first rift boundary. But yes, sir, it's human." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Then we go in." As the Eternal Resolve crossed into the rift, the ship shuddered. Gravity pulled at it from impossible angles. Shadows flickered across the hull, shapes too large to be real. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, until they sounded almost like voices calling from another world. And then, through the noise, came another voice. Kieran. He froze. It was faint, distorted, but he would have known it anywhere. Ilara. Hope surged through him like fire. She was alive. Against every probability, every warning, every law of physics, she was alive. But the signal was unstable, breaking in and out. Kieran. Not safe. Too close. Static swallowed the rest. The Admiral ordered them to hold position, but Kieran gripped the console. Sir, we can't stop now. She's right there. I can guide us. Voss studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Then guide us, Lieutenant. Bring her home. The chase into the rift was like nothing Kieran had ever experienced. Energy storms flared across the void, tearing at the ship's shields. Massive shapes drifted in the darkness, remnants of ships, frozen in time. The signal grew stronger, but so did the dangers. Twice, the Eternal Resolve barely dodged sudden gravitational spikes that could have crushed the ship. And then, they found it, a small, battered research vessel, floating in the shadow of a fractured asteroid. Its hull was scorched, but its beacon still pulsed. Kieran's voice shook as he hailed it. This is Lieutenant Kieran Hawley of the Eternal Resolve. Ilara, do you read me? The pause felt endless. Then a reply. Kieran. I knew you'd. Come. When the docking clamps locked onto the smaller ship, Kieran stood at the airlock, heart pounding. The door hissed open, and there she was, older, thinner, but unmistakably Ilara. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she smiled, the same way she had all those years ago. You didn't let the stars make you forget, she said softly. He shook his head, fighting back tears. Not once. The return from silence. That's what the galaxy would call this day, the day the Eternal Resolve brought back the first survivors ever rescued from the Black Rift. But for Kieran, it would always mean something else. The day. Hope proved stronger than distance, stronger than time, stronger than fear. Because in the vast, cold silence of space, humanity still found a way to reach each other. Asterisk. The Eternal Resolve had done the impossible. It had found survivors in the Black Rift. For the galaxy, it was a miracle. For Lieutenant Kieran Hawley, it was personal. Ilara Vey was alive, standing on the deck beside him after 10 years apart. But the truth was, she felt far away. They sat together in the mess hall on their first night back aboard the Supercarrier. Around them, the crew celebrated loudly, raising glasses to the rescue. But Kieran barely tasted his drink. You've changed, he said finally. Ilara gave a faint smile. 10 years in the rift will do that. Kieran wanted to ask her everything. What she'd seen, how she'd survived, if she'd thought of him as much as he'd thought of her. But when their eyes met, he saw a distance in hers, like she was still looking at something far beyond. The room. You were always good at finding people, she said softly. But some parts of us get lost in ways you can't chart on a map. Her words stayed with him long after she left the table. The next day, the Eternal Resolve docked at the Council's orbital station. Alien delegates from dozens of species had gathered. They wanted to hear how humans had crossed the rift, and to demand they never try again. Kieran wasn't in the meeting room. He stood outside, waiting, when the double doors slid open and Admiral Voss walked out with a grim face. They think we're reckless, the Admiral told him. They think what we did was a fluke, that humanity can't possibly survive going deeper into the rift. Kieran frowned. And what do we think? Voss's eyes narrowed. We think they're wrong. Later, Kieran found Ilara in the medical bay. She was sitting by the window, staring at the planet below. They're saying we shouldn't go back, he told her. Maybe they're right, she said without looking at him. The words hit harder than he expected. He'd imagined that once. They found her, She'd be ready to stand with him again, like old times. But she seemed tired. He stopped. He wanted to tell her he'd come all this way because she mattered to him, because even in silence, she'd been his reason to keep going. But the words caught in his throat. I don't know how to talk to you anymore, he admitted instead. She finally turned to him. Then, maybe just start by listening. So he listened. Over the next week, Kieran joined her during quiet hours, when the rest of the crew was busy. She told him about the rift, how it was like living in a place where time didn't move the same way, where you couldn't trust your own senses. How she'd lost people, one by one, until she was the last. I kept sending out signals, she said one night, her voice low. Not because I thought anyone would come, but because it was the only thing that kept me from giving up. Kieran thought about the message he'd sent before the mission. Just a few words, sent into darkness. And she had heard it. The council eventually called a public hearing, broadcast across the galaxy. Alien leaders stood on a great platform, warning of the dangers of the rift. The Andwari spoke first, their crystal-like voices carrying a tone of absolute certainty. Humanity has achieved a dangerous thing. The rift is alive, and it will devour them. They should not tempt fate a second time. Kieran sat in the audience, clenching his fists. To them, humans were children playing with fire. They didn't understand. This wasn't just about exploration or pride. It was about people. About never leaving anyone behind. And then, unexpectedly, Elara stepped forward to the podium. My name is Commander Elara Vey, she began. I spent 10 years inside the rift. Every other ship that entered was lost, but humanity came for me. Against the warnings. Against the odds. Against reason, some might say. The Eternal Resolve had its next mission. Not everyone agreed with it, but for Kieran Hawley and Commander Elara Vey, it was clear they were going back into the Black Rift. Yet even with a shared purpose, Kieran still felt that distance between them. The ship bustled with activity. Volunteers poured in from across the human colonies, pilots, engineers, medics, scientists. Many of them knew the risks, yet signed up without hesitation. The crew was a patchwork of accents and backgrounds, but they shared one thing, a stubborn refusal to let the unknown win. Kieran found himself assigned to help train the new pilots for deep rift navigation. It kept him busy, but he couldn't help noticing how often Elara was somewhere else, in the lab, in strategy briefings, or working with the engineers. When they did speak, the conversation was polite but brief, like there was still a barrier neither could name. One evening, as he finished a simulation run, he saw her across the hangar, talking with Chief Engineer Rourke. They were discussing something on a datapad, faces serious. Kieran thought about walking over, but stopped. It wasn't fear, exactly. It was the uncertainty of not knowing if she wanted him there. The truth was, Kieran had imagined their reunion for so long that reality felt strange. In his mind, they'd pick up where they left off. Easy smiles, long talks, the unspoken trust they once had. But the years had changed them both. She had been through things he couldn't imagine. He had been chasing the idea of her, not the person she was now. Still, the rift had given them one miracle already. Maybe it could give them another. 3 days later, Admiral Voss called a full crew assembly in the main briefing hall. Holograms of the Black Rift swirled above the stage, showing the path the Eternal Resolve would take. This mission, Voss began, isn't just about exploration. We have reason to believe there are multiple human and allied ships trapped deep within the rift. We will attempt to locate and recover as many as possible. The room went quiet. Everyone knew what as many as possible meant. They wouldn't be able to save everyone. Elara stepped forward, her voice steady. Some of you may doubt this mission, Some may fear the rift. I understand. But I spent 10 years in there, waiting for a signal. And it came. From us. From humanity. I will not stop until we've answered every signal we can. The room erupted. In applause. Even some of the older crew members looked moved. Kieran felt a swell of pride. And hope. That night, Kieran found Ilara in the observation deck. She was looking out at the streaking stars as the Eternal Resolve moved to its staging point. "You spoke well today," he said. She smiled faintly. "You think so? I know so? The crew believes in you." Her smile faded slightly. "It's easier to give a speech than to know how to talk to someone after years apart." Kieran felt his chest tighten. "I've been feeling that too," he admitted. "I keep wanting to just start where we left off, but maybe that's not possible." Ilara turned to face him. "Maybe it's not about going back. Maybe it's about finding a new place to meet in the middle." They didn't fix everything in that moment, but the honesty between them made the distance feel a little smaller. The next days were filled with preparation. The new pilots learned to fly in unpredictable gravitational tides. Engineers reinforced the hull with adaptive plating that could shift under pressure. Scientists prepared deep-scan drones to map areas of the rift no one had seen before. And slowly, Kieran and Ilara began to talk more. Sometimes about the mission, sometimes about small things. Old jokes from training, music they used to share, even the food they missed from their HOMEWORLDS. It wasn't the same as before, but it was something real. One evening, they were testing the long-range comms when a faint burst of static came through. It wasn't clear, but it carried a rhythm. Ilara leaned forward, adjusting the filters. "It's a beacon," she said. "Human origin. Could be decades old." Kieran grinned. "Looks like we're not the only ones who send messages into the dark." Ilara met his eyes. "Then we'd better be ready to answer them." On launch day, the crew gathered it there. Stations. The Eternal Resolve drifted at the edge of the rift, its black mass swallowing the light of nearby stars. A comms filled with the sound of breathing, orders, and the steady hum of the engines. Kieran sat at his console, glancing once at Ilara across the command deck. She caught his eye and gave a small nod, not just a signal to begin, but an unspoken promise. "We're doing this together." The ship's thrusters roared. They crossed into the rift. Inside, space twisted and pulled at them. Shadows moved where no light should be. Strange shapes flickered at the edge of vision. The deep scanners lit up with multiple faint signals, possible ships, scattered like islands in a black sea. "Lock coordinates." Voss ordered. As Kieran entered the data, he heard Ilara's voice beside him. "We can't save everyone, but we can save someone. That's enough to start." He looked at her, realizing that maybe reconnecting wasn't about recreating the past. It was about building a future, one rescue, one signal, one step at a time. The distance between them wasn't gone, but it no longer felt like an empty void. It felt like a path they could walk together, dangerous, uncertain, but real. And in that moment, with the rift closing around them, Kieran understood something deeply human. Hope doesn't always come from what's close. Sometimes it comes from what's still far away, because it gives you a reason to keep moving toward it. Asterisk, the Eternal Resolve slid deeper into the black rift, its hull creaking under invisible forces. Lights dimmed slightly as the energy shields absorbed constant pressure. Kieran Halla sat at his station, eyes darting between readouts. Strange gravitational waves rippled across the ship. It was like sailing through an ocean that didn't want them there. Across the command deck, Commander Ilara Vey stood beside Admiral Voss. She looked calm, focused. Kieran wanted to believe she felt the same rush of purpose he did, but the space between them, though only a few meters, felt larger than the rift itself. They had been moving for 3 days. Every scan revealed more mysteries. Flickering shadows that might be ships, glowing patterns in the void that faded when approached. The rift seemed alive. The signals they'd picked up earlier had grown stronger, but so had the dangers. On the second day, a sudden gravity surge had nearly torn the ship apart. Half the crew called it a warning. The other half called it proof that they were getting close. For Kieran, it was a reminder that every second mattered. Somewhere out there, people were waiting. Late that night, he found himself in the mess hall. Alara walked in quietly, carrying a mug of tea. She sat across from him, and for a moment they just stared at each other. "It's hard to sleep here," she said finally. "The rift feels like it's listening." Kieran nodded. "I keep thinking about the people sending those signals. Do they even know we're coming?" Alara looked down at her mug. "When I was trapped here, I didn't think anyone would come. I kept sending signals anyway, not because I believed, but because I needed to believe." He wanted to say that was why he was here, because she had taught him that. But the words stuck in his throat again. The next day, they reached the source of the strongest signal yet, a massive debris field orbiting a broken asteroid. Dozens of ships floated there, many split in two, some no more than shattered hulls. "There," Alara said, pointing to a faint beacon light pulsing in the darkness. It was a small transport ship. Its engines long dead, but life signs still flickered. Faintly, Voss ordered a rescue team. Kieran volunteered immediately. Alara hesitated for half a second, then stepped forward. "I'm going too." The shuttle ride was silent, except for the hum of the engines. Kieran kept stealing glances at her. She seemed distant again, her eyes fixed on the wreck ahead. He wondered if coming back here was harder for her than she'd admitted. They boarded the transport cautiously. The air was stale, the lights flickering. In the control room, they found them. 5 survivors, weak and dehydrated, but alive. One of them, an older man, looked at Kieran with wide eyes. "You're human?" "Yes," Kieran said. The man's lips trembled. "We thought you were gone. All of you. No one else came." Kieran helped him stand. "We came," he said firmly. Back on the Eternal Resolve, the rescued crew were taken to the medical bay. As Kieran stepped out, Alara caught up to him. "You were good with them," she said quietly. He shrugged. "I just told them the truth." She was silent for a long moment, then said, "I used to tell myself that if anyone came for me, it would be humans. Not because we're stronger or smarter, but because we don't give up on each other, even when we should." Kieran met her eyes. "Even when we feel far away from each other?" Her lips curved into a small smile. "Even then." The celebration over the rescue was brief. Hours later, the ship was shaken by a massive impact. Alarms blared. The command deck lit up with warning signs. Unidentified mass approaching fast. A crew member shouted on the view screen. A shape emerged from the darkness, vast, shifting almost like a living shadow. The rift's predator moved impossibly fast for something so huge, its form rippling like smoke and metal. The energy around it spiked, pulling at the ship's shields. Kieran's hands moved over his console. Shields at 70% and falling. Voss barked orders. Evasive maneuvers. "All fighters stand by." Through the chaos, Kieran saw Elira's expression. She wasn't just afraid. She looked like she recognized it. "That's what hunted us," she said under her breath. The predator lashed out, a tendril. The Eternal Resolve sailed deeper into the rift, its crew silent after the first encounter with the living shadow. The predator had withdrawn for now, but everyone knew it was still out there, watching. Kieran Heil sat in the comms room, scanning the faint rescue signals they had logged earlier. Each one represented a chance to save someone. But each one also meant traveling further into the Predator's hunting ground. Elara stepped into the room quietly. He didn't turn right away. She hadn't said much since the attack, and part of him was afraid that speaking would bring back the distance between them. "You're still here," she said. "I can't stop thinking about those signals." Kieran replied, "If we wait too long, they'll fade. And so will the people sending them." She leaned against the wall. "That's exactly how I felt when I was trapped here. Every day, the signals got weaker. Every day, I wondered if anyone was even listening." Kieran finally looked at her. "We're listening now." The next morning, Admiral Voss called a meeting in the strategy room. Holograms displayed the rift's map, or rather, the few parts they could actually chart. The Predator's path was marked by zones of intense gravitational distortion. It's targeting ships one by one. Voss said, "If we try to rescue everyone, it'll catch us eventually. We need a plan." Elara studied the hologram. "It's not random. It's guarding something. Look, all the attacks happen around this cluster here." Kieran's eyes widened. "That's where the strongest signals are coming from." The Admiral frowned. "So we either avoid the Predator and leave people behind, or we go straight through it." Kieran didn't hesitate. "Then we go through it." The crew prepared for battle. The fighter wings were armed with antimatter lances designed for piercing dense matter. No one knew if they'd work against a living shadow, but they had no other choice. Kieran joined the strike team, though he noticed Elara working with the engineers instead of preparing for a cockpit. "You're not flying?" he asked. "I'm going to be in the targeting station," she said. "If this works, it'll be because you keep the Predator distracted long enough for me to hit its core." Kieran swallowed. "Then I guess we'll both be trusting each other." She met his eyes. "We already are." When the Predator appeared again, it didn't creep out of the darkness like before. This time, it came at them full force, a massive, shifting storm of black and silver, its limbs stretching across kilometers. Kieran launched with the other fighters, engines screaming as they dived between the Predator's attacks. Energy tendrils lashed out, swatting ships away like insects. "Draw it to the left flank." Elara's voice came over comms, calm and steady. "I've almost got a lock." Kieran banked hard, firing his lances into the creature's side. Light made it recoil slightly, but not enough. The Predator turned on him, its massive shape blotting out what little starlight remained. For a moment, fear gripped him. This thing was beyond human scale, beyond human understanding. But he thought of the people still sending signals, still waiting. He thought of Elara, trapped for 10 years, yet never giving up. "Not today," he muttered, diving straight toward. The Predator's center got the move, caught its attention completely. It roared, a soundless vibration through space, and reached for him. "Now, Elara!" He shouted Dot back on the eternal resolve. Elara's hands flew over the targeting controls. The ship's main cannon locked on to the Predator's energy core, a faint glow deep inside its swirling mass. "Firing!" she called. A beam of pure energy ripped from the Supercarrier, striking the core dead center. The Predator convulsed, its form twisting violently before exploding outward in a wave of dark particles. The shockwave hit Kieran's fighter hard, spinning him through the rift. When his system stabilized, the Predator was gone. The space around them felt lighter. Cheers erupted over the comms, that Kieran's only thought was getting back to the carrier. When he landed, Elara was already waiting in the hangar. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, both alive, both still. "Here, you flew right into it," she said quietly. "And you didn't miss," he replied. Her smile was small but real. "Guess that makes us even." With the Predator gone, the rescue missions could continue without constant threat. Over the next days, they found and saved dozens of survivors, human and alien alike. Every time they brought people aboard, Kieran thought of what Ilara had told the council. Humans. Always humans. The distance between them wasn't gone completely, but it was filled now with shared victories. They didn't have to talk about everything all at once. Some connections were rebuilt one action at a time. On their final day in that sector, as they prepared to move deeper into the rift, Ilara found Kieran in the observation deck. "You know," she said, "when I first came back, I thought we were too far apart to find our way back. But now, I think we're closer than we've been in years." He smiled. "We've still got a long way to go." "Good," she said. "That means we've still got time." In the rift, distance could feel endless. But for humanity, distance was never the end. It was just the space between where you were and where you were going. And as long as you kept moving forward, you could always close it. Asterisk, the eternal resolve floated at the heart of the rift, surrounded by a field of shattered ships. The remnants of the Predator's attack glimmered faintly against the black void. Signals from dozens of trapped vessels blinked weakly across the comm systems. Kieran Hawai stared at the readouts. Each signal was a life. Each life was someone waiting for rescue. But the danger was clear. The rift was unpredictable, and the Metis Predator might return. Beside him, Commander Ilara Vey studied the same data. She looked calm, but Kieran could see the tension in her hands, the tight line of her jaw. "This is the largest group we've found," she said softly. "We can't leave them here." He nodded. "Then we go all in." Admiral Voss gathered the bridge crew. "This mission is a gamble," he warned. "The rift is unstable. One miscalculation, and we could lose everything. But the survivors are waiting. We're not leaving them behind." Kieran's heart pounded. He thought about the distance that had stretched between him and Ilara. 4 years he had imagined reconnecting, worried that time and distance had changed her too much. But now, faced with the chance to save dozens of people, he realized something. Fear of emotional distance didn't matter if they acted together. "Let's do it," he said, voice steady. "All of us." The plan was simple but dangerous. Eternal Resolve would move into the cluster of trapped ships, while fighter wings created a protective corridor. Kieran would lead the first strike team. Ilara would guide the operation from the targeting station, and the carrier would act as both shield and command center. As they suited up, Kieran felt a twinge of doubt. What if they couldn't get everyone out? What if the rift shifted suddenly? But he looked at Ilara, standing beside him in her flight suit, and the distance he had felt melted a little. "We can do this," he said. Her eyes softened. "We have to." The fighters launched into the debris field. Kieran's team weaved between wrecks, dodging energy spikes and gravitational pulls. Every movement felt like threading a needle through darkness. Over the comms, Ilara's voice guided them. "Left flank clear. Move forward slowly. Keep formation tight. Focus on the weakest signals first." Kieran followed her instructions, feeling the familiar rhythm of teamwork that had once bound them together. The connection they had lost over years of distance now felt alive in the middle of chaos. They reached the first trapped ship, a small transport vessel. Kieran's hands shook as he guided the clamps to lock onto the hull. Life signs were faint but steady. "Got them," he called. "Bring them home." As the survivors were pulled aboard, an energy surge hit nearby, rocking Kieran's fighter. He fought to maintain control as debris tore past. The rift seemed to sense their efforts, trying to push them back. "Stay calm," Ilara's voice said over the comm. "We're almost through. Focus on the lives, not the chaos." He took a deep breath, letting her words anchor him. It was strange. She wasn't just giving commands. She was reminding him of what he had always believed. Humanity doesn't give up on each other. Hours passed. The Eternal Resolve slowly moved through the cluster, rescuing ship after ship. Kieran and Alara coordinated tirelessly. Every success brought them closer together, not just physically on the ship, but emotionally. Still, the danger was constant. The rift shifted violently, pulling at the carrier's hull. A flash of dark energy streaked toward Kieran's fighter, forcing him to dive sharply. Too close. He shouted over comms, "We're fine." Alara replied, her voice calm, almost soothing. "You can do this. Just a little further." He followed her directions, trusting her instincts even as fear gripped him. Finally, they reached the largest trapped vessel, a massive cruiser with hundreds of survivors. The energy readings showed it had been on the edge of collapse for years. The Eternal Resolve couldn't tow it entirely. They would need to evacuate everyone manually. Kieran's fighter hovered near the airlock as he guided survivors one by one. Alara monitored the operation from the targeting station, issuing instructions for shields and defensive maneuvers. For the first time since the mission began, Kieran realized something important. The emotional distance he had felt with her didn't matter anymore. They were connected through action, through trust, through shared purpose. Then, a massive gravitational spike struck, throwing Kieran's fighter violently. The shuttle carrying survivors